This is John with FixedDirtBike.com, and this is how the front hub works on your dirt bike. Front wheel hub assemblies vary, but the basics are the same. You will have a bearing to allow the wheel to spin, seals to protect that bearing, spacers to keep everything aligned, an axle for the bearings to ride on, an axle nut to hold the assembly together, and pinch bolts to secure the axle to the forks. Bearings. The wheel bearings are the most important part of the hub. These are the only parts of the hub that move. The inner bearing race mounts to the axle, and the outer bearing race mounts to the bore of the hub. The inner and outer bearing race are connected with ball bearings. Depending on the manufacturer, some bearings come pre-greased and shielded on both sides, while others are only shielded on one side and need to be greased before install. Wheel bearings are the only point of contact between the wheel and the bike, so the forces put on them are extremely high. Because of the stress the bearings are put under, they must be in perfect working order. Bearings do wear down, but can last for a very long time when properly installed and maintained. When the bearings become damaged or contaminated, like the ones you see here, they must be replaced. Bearing seals. The bearing seals keep water and contaminants out of the hub and away from the bearings. Seal failure is the main cause of bearing failure. Dust, dirt, sand, grit, and water will dramatically reduce the lifespan of the bearings. Spacers. The spacer between the bearings is called the distance collar, and it connects the bearings inside the hub. The spacers on the left and right of the hub connect the bearings to the axle mounts and keep the wheel positioned on the axle. Axle. The axle holds all the parts of the hub and connects them to the forks. Axle nut. The axle nut holds the hub together when mounted on the forks. The axle nut must be torqued to manufacturer's spec to allow the hub to work correctly. If the nut is too loose, the spacers and seals will spin, causing damage to the axle. If the nut is too tight, it may warp the inner bearing race, destroying your bearings. Pinch bolts. The pinch bolts secure the axle to the forks. These bolts also need to be torqued correctly, or the axle will spin in the mounts, causing damage to both the forks and the axle. Because the axle connects the two forks, you must torque the axle nut first, then the pinch bolts on that same side. Before you torque the pinch bolts on the opposite side, you need to compress the forks several times to ensure the mounts are aligned to the axle properly. If the forks are not aligned correctly, they will bind and damage the fork tubes. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.